In previous lessons, we have spent a considerable amount of time talking about how you can build counter-controlled and sentinel-controlled loops. In many cases, you may wish not to evaluate the contents of a loop based upon certain conditions. Or, at some point, you may wish to exit a loop for a specific reason. C# offers two statements that allow you to move along to the next iteration of a loop or exit a loop. These statements are break and continue. Break allows you to exit a loop and stop iterating for any reason. Continue allows you to move to the next iteration and stops evaluating the contents of the while loop for that current iteration. Let's look over some examples of how you can use these two statements. Let's build an application using counter-controlled iteration. We'll define a counter, and in this case, we'll use a while loop. Please note that you can use break and continue for any type of loop, whether it be while, do while, or for. But for the purpose of these examples, we will use a while loop. We will define a counter variable. And we'll start at 0. We will then write a while loop that iterates through the loop while the counter is less than 10. Each time, we will write to the screen the value of my counter. Then, we will increment the value of my counter. We know in previous examples this will write values 0 through 9 to the screen, 10 values in total, and will stop when my counter equals 10. If we so choose, we can stop the loop when my counter equals 5 and stop evaluating completely. We can use the break statement to stop evaluation of a loop and essentially break out of the loop. So, let's add an if statement. If my counter is 5, then exit the loop. This means that while our counter is supposed to evaluate while my counter is less than 10, when we encounter 5, the loop will end, and we will not write 0 through 9 to the screen. Instead, we will write 0 through 5, and the application will stop. This is because we inserted a break statement. When the condition my counter equals 5 is met and evaluates to true, we call break. Break ends the loop and puts you on line 31. It no longer evaluates, it no longer increments my counter, and it no longer loops. Let's run this application. As you can see on the screen, we've only written 0 through 5 and nothing more. That is because the loop was broken when my counter equals 5. While we used a break statement for counter-controlled iteration, you will find that breaks are more useful when using sentinel-controlled iteration. For instance, if I am evaluating the average temperature over a number of days, I can use the break statement to look at the user input and stop when the user inputs a sentinel. Let's write a quick application that does just this. We will define an integer that will take in all of the temperatures for a given number of days and a number of days that the user input. We will then create a while loop that runs on forever. You'll note I put a comment of pseudocode that says run while loop forever until user stops. The user will stop the loop using a sentinel value of stop. Let's ask the user for input. We will ask the user for the input for the current day. We will then gather the user input as a string. Now, we will evaluate what the user input. If the user input the word stop in all caps, then we will use the break statement to stop the loop. If the user did not input stop, then we will continue our evaluation. We will take the user input, convert it to an integer, add it to the total, and increase the days. Once the user has broken out of the loop using the sentinel, we will write to the screen the average temperature for all days. Let's run this application. On day 4, as you can see, I am writing the word stop. When we hit enter, we will meet the condition that user input equals stop in all capital letters. At this point, we will hit a break statement, and the loop will stop evaluating. We will then display the temperature average for all the days that we input. As we can see, the average temperature over the last 3 days is 72 degrees. We did not evaluate day 4 because the user entered stop. We then hit a break statement. This is an example of how break can help with Sentinel controlled iteration. Now let's say the user has no data for a specific day. We can use continue in order to keep a loop going and omitting the remaining execution of the loop block. So here's an example. On day 2, my temperature gauge was broken, and I was unable to input a value for a specific day. If that's the case, I don't want to include the 0 value in my average. I can use the loop to omit that information by calling continue. In this case, I can check to see if user input is blank. If the user input is blank, I will not increase the days and I will not add to the total. I will add some pseudocode. If user has no data, continue and don't include an average. If user input equals nothing, a blank string, I'm going to make a call to continue. Continue is used with the word continue and a semicolon. When continue is called, lines 38 through 40 that I have just selected will not be evaluated, and we will go back to the beginning of the loop. You will then see a repeat of days. So on day 1, I will input a value. Day 2, I have no data. So it will then again ask me for another day 2, which could possibly be Wednesday, and I will add more data. So in this instance, day 1 would be a Monday. Tuesday, which would have been day 2, I have no data. Wednesday becomes my day 2 of data. Thursday's day 3, so on and so forth. But for that 1 day of data, I have continued on without inputting a value to the total in order to calculate the average. Let's run this application. My temperature for day 1, I'm going to add as 72. My initial temperature for day 2, I don't know. So I'm going to hit enter and not input a value. I am asked again for a day 2 data. In this case, I will add 80. I'm asked for day 3 data. In this case, I will type in 64. Now, without that continue call, I would have entered 4 values, one which would have evaluated to 0 because it was blank, and my average would be skewed. Essentially, I would be adding 72, 0, 80, and 64 together and dividing by 4, when really I wanted to add 72, 80, 64 together and divide by 3 in order to get a 3-day average of 72. I've solved this problem by using a continue statement. I am not evaluating 4 days, rather, I am evaluating 3 as I intended. On day 4, I will enter stop. And when I input this value, the value will be for 3 days and the average will be for 72 degrees. As you can see, the average temperature over 3 days is 72. So again, the continue statement that we have typed allows you to skip lines in a loop but still keep iterating. The break statement, on the other hand, cancels the evaluation of the loop altogether and no longer iterates through the block of code specified in the loop.